With the door. Was that money or what?
Right on time.
Let's get a little sage. So what I was going to say to you is sound. We were talking about how it's hard to hear your voice.
Yeah.
And I used to struggle with that a lot when I first started going on podcast, or probably on like a radio show when I was in college, or like playing sports. I had to do radio shows a few times, and I do remember struggling with that, hearing my own voice. But then I got over it, and I also enjoy what we're doing so much. So it was something, kind of what I was telling you earlier, like it was like something that I just like had to get over.
Yeah.
So it's like, what are you going to do? But the reason why I was telling you to hold that thought before we got recording was because remember I was telling you how when you play a sound bowl, like when you're playing it, it feels different from the person who's receiving it.
Yes.
And then when you hear yourself in a microphone and you're like, that's what my voice sounds like. Do you think that's the same? That was a thought I didn't want to lose, because do you think that that's the same? Like I'm talking and projecting energy out. So you're receiving that vibration.
Yeah.
But then when I talk into a mic, the vibration comes back to me in a way. Yeah. So I hear it differently. And I think that might be maybe what trips people out.
It's interesting because it certainly trips people out, and that makes sense that it would, because again, yeah, it's like normally if we're hearing our voice, to your point, it's like just going outward. And we might hear it bouncing off the wall or whatever, but I think also like you got to experience when we did like the chanting a little bit, it's like when you're speaking and it's just like you get to really like feel that, and there's something, I don't know. It's a weird thing, and I have compassion for that anxiety and the way that is like so uncomfortable for people, but similar to you, I just had to get over it. Mm-hmm. And it's to the point that it's like, it doesn't feel that weird anymore. I'm glad. I'm glad that I'm over that, because I see people even, at the studio when we'll do like a share circle, and you can see people are like mortified to just say their name out loud in a room. It's like, I don't know. It's what a bizarre state of affairs, that one of the most powerful things we have and one of the biggest blessings we have as humans, that we should feel so, whether it's embarrassment or a shyness about, it goes back to just the same old thing where so many people are afraid to take up space. They're afraid to take up sonic space. But meanwhile, they just do all the time anyways, unwittingly, like loud chewers.
Yeah.
I bet a lot of loud chewers, if you said like, hey, can you just like tell me how your day went in like a public setting, they'd be like, oh, whoa, no way. But they don't mind chomping on their chips and like making everybody hear the sound of the bag crinkle.
I had to work on that. I was a loud chewer.
Oh, really?
I got called out on it so many times that I had to become mindful of it. Wow. But it's mindlessness. Wow. You're mindless.
Yeah.
From my experience, I was just mindless. But I also was I went into college at 153 pounds. I remember that exact number as a Division I athlete. I was like 6'1".
I was going to say, because you're tall, you must have been like a rail.
I was a rail.
Wow.
And I remember that number because of how it was.
Yeah.
And I was a D1 athlete, so that's rare to be that small.
Were you a pitcher?
I was an infielder and a pitcher.
Okay.
But I could throw.
Yeah, I was going to say, because like being lanky actually a lot of times is kind of an asset for...
Yeah, and I think I actually overdid it. I actually think about this now and my weight now. I think of it as I think I overdid it and reversed a lot of my genetics and a lot of my biology. And I think now my body type, like I think if I wouldn't have what I'm about to tell you happened, I think I would be a different body type now. And so I went like obsessive overeating. And a lot of this was actually driven by my coaches. No shade.
Was that like trying to gain?
Yeah, there's
no to put on some weight.
There's no shade on the coaches. That's kind of what we were doing, right?
Yeah.
And like I remember in college, the football team, there were a couple of my buddies who were on the football team who redshirted, and these two guys who I'm thinking about specifically made it to the NFL, I believe. One of the guys did for sure, and they redshirted only to put on weight. And I remember at some of their practices, they would say that for the practice they would just eat, and the coaches didn't want them to practice because they didn't want them to burn. They didn't want them to burn anything, so just eat. And they redshirted to just eat and lift because they had the tools and the talent, and so their red shirt was purely to get to the size of a Division I lineman. And then the next year they were tearing it up. Like they did it with a few people.
It worked.
Yeah, it worked. And so for me, I remember it was to eat as much as possible was what it was. I remember one time I had 7 chicken breast and I got sick. I was so full because I was eating with other stuff, but we were on our spring trip in Florida and our coaches had made us all chicken breast and these like meals for dinner after one of the games. And I had to stay. They would always poke fun of it, but I kind of had to do it too. I had to stay and eat. I think it was 7 chicken breast.
Wow.
And I would do it. And I did put on a ton of weight. I got really big and really strong, and all those things happened. But where I'm going with the loud chewing is then I got done with sports, and a girl I was seeing at the time, she used to always get super grossed out with how loud I would chew. And I didn't know, I would get resentful because I never had been called out for that, but I also didn't know that I was doing that.
Right.
And when I look back at it, because now in my mid-30s, so this will be 10 years post-playing this summer. I'm coming up on the full decade when I got released from the Brewers. And I think about it, I still to this day, if I'm not, which I fail regularly, I will overeat, not necessarily terribly overeat, but I eat so fast.
Sure.
And it was because when I was in my young 18 to like 24, we'll call it, I would eat as fast as I could so that I could try to knock it full. So it's like if you gave me 7 chicken breasts, as long as I
you got to eat that in like 10 minutes, or your body's going to go, what are we doing?
So as long as I would stuff it in me before I could catch it, I would be able to eat the meals. Wow. So I think that had something to do with it. What a fun little peel of my memory to go back into. I'm happy that you brought that up. That's wild.
Well, and I laugh a little because I'm like, to this day, I kind of have the eating strategy for like, I do try to eat fast so I can eat a lot. I'm not like trying to gain weight, or I'm not interested in my weight technically, but I do like to eat, and I like to eat a lot. And I'm just like, I'm an intermittent faster partly because I know like when I eat a meal, I like that feeling after of like, whoa, we really put it away.
We worked.
Yeah, we really just like, we did that. I remember I was in a band one time and this guy had joined the band and we were all just like shooting the breeze and then like took a break during a practice and we're talking about French fries and I was saying how like French fries are so great. And he challenged me to like a French fry eating contest. He was like, we should have see who can eat the most French fries.
Sure, yeah.
And I was like, you better like don't
get to work.
Yeah. I mean,
know where you're at,
if you want to do it, like we can find out real fast.
100%.
And then like literally a minute later, he made a comment. We brought up, Five Guys. Anyone who doesn't know, if you order French fries from a Five Guys restaurant, they give you like a cup of the fries and then they give you like an extra scoop in the bag of just like bonus fries. Yep. And he made the comment that he's like, I don't really like Five Guys. They give you too many French fries. And I thought, this contest is already over. Like, what are you talking about? That sounds so good
right now, Five Guys fries.
To me, for my dollar, that's like a top 10 fry for sure.
Those burgers are money too.
The burgers are good. Yeah, they make a good burger. But yeah, so I love to like put it away. And I noticed, because my mom would always talk to me about the like, eating slow is a good way to like, your body will know you're full. Sometimes you just got to give your body the time to like catch up to that message. And I kind of I think I went the wrong way with it. It was like, oh, so like eat even faster.
Yeah.
Like put away even more food. But it's fascinating to hear that about you. I never would have guessed that you could have ever weighed that little.
Right.
My body kind of took the opposite jaunt, thinking it was interesting when you brought up like, it's like fighting the genetics a little bit maybe. Because I used to be pretty big. In junior high, I was probably this tall and about 230.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you were big.
I was a big fella. And I know the football coaches wanted me to be a lineman.
In junior high. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would have probably been like 130.
Yeah, that's so crazy. But I didn't, I was already busy kind of in like my punk rock musician rebellion thing. So, and also one of the, again, not going to put anybody on blast, but one of the football coach, he was like the PE guy or whatever too, one of the two PE guys. And he had made some pretty, like, in today's environment, that comment definitely doesn't fly about another student. And I remember thinking like, wow, like this guy is just like the worst. And so when they asked me to play football, it was like, there's no way I'm going to do anything you tell me. And in retrospect, I'm glad I didn't, because like I was getting head trauma anyways, running into lockers, throwing myself downstairs, just in the name of punk, let's just be crazy.
So you've been in the music scene for a minute.
Music has been with me forever. Yeah, for sure. And I can't speak to really, like any initial spark. It's not like it was particularly in the home in like a prominent way. I know a lot of people will say like, oh, music was always in the house.
Yeah.
And like, I don't think it wasn't not. It was certainly not discouraged, but I don't know that it was particularly encouraged beyond, my mom tells me that like, I think she told me that it was my idea to get into violin when I was about 4. And so like went down that pathway, took up drums.
What age was drums?
Drums was about, let's see, 5th grade, I think is when that was. So 10-ish, 11-ish, about 11 years old, 10 years old. And then that became a thing. And then around that time also started, maybe a few years after that, started working on teaching myself to play guitars.
Wow.
And by then I was, teenager. So it was like violin. Also, I think the fact that I've been playing the violin for 10 years by that point, I was bored.
Right.
Kind of, but also, the scourge of hormones and everything that comes with that age. I was like, there's no way I'm going to play the violin. Like, chicks don't like the violin.
They want drums.
They want the drums.
Guitar.
They want the guitar. Yeah. So definitely, wasted a couple of years of my life, I think, thinking that that's the thing to do because, like popularity and like social status stuff.
Yep.
Still glad I did that because like drumming is awesome. And I'm not the kind of character like that. Cheap motivation was never going to last. Right. It quickly was going to become about the music, and it was, and it is to this day. So it's also kind of funny when I think back more about, sometimes people will ask, like, how'd you get involved in the sound healing stuff? And to appreciate, in my mind, for a long time, there kind of was a divide. But I'm kind of appreciating more and more the more I do this, how like, well, they are really like, there's so much similarity still. The art of listening, the sensitivity of being able to feel what an instrument is telling you, not just making it do things and not just passively receiving it as a listener. Back to this idea of like that different experience of receiving the bowls versus playing is really the big difference. Is when you are playing, you're getting that extra layer of feedback. The bowl is talking to you directly. Sure. It is talking to the other people, but it knows, like, talking to them, that they're, what's like the right metaphor? If the bowl tells you something, it's almost like the bowl knows that if I tell this guy, he can do something about it. Whereas if I tell them, they can't alter anything in this moment. Sure. So like you serve as like an ambassador, kind of. The mallet is really the ambassador, but
Well, I remember the first time that's one of the things that drew me to you. It has to be coming up on 2 years now.
Yeah.
And when you were talking, for those listening, I went to a sound bowl retreat, right? Is it
training workshop? Yeah. We kind of still do this. It's like, how do you?
Yeah, and she was, which first of all, just for people, Richard.
Yes, legally Richard.
I've never heard chi with Richard. I don't know if that's common, but it worked out brilliantly. So that was obviously supposed to happen. So I'm going with chi. As I told you, I'm not calling you Richard.
Yes, and I totally into it.
But anyways, one of the things that chi really I really vibed with was your metaphors and your storytelling inside of the teaching. And I can talk a little bit about that experience from my end too, because I was incredibly nervous to be there. It's back to what you were saying about not nervous of saying my name, but I was nervous to be there. That was very outside my element at the time. And I don't really have any musical background. So there was a lot of those nerves, but then one of the things that I remember about this training that was mentioned, and I use it in all of my teaching now, and this is one of the things I've enjoyed about the sound bathing, but I picked this up at that event, was you guys were urging us, you were talking about how, the group was talking about how when you play a sound bowl, the energy is not yours. So if you create the frequencies, you're basically, you're using the palette, you're playing the bowl, whatever. But the person receiving the information, receiving the energy, if you attach any of your ego to that, then you disrupt their experience, is how I heard it, right? I'm sure it was told differently. So I've packaged it. It's been 2 years now. I'm packaging it to how I've used it. But it has helped me a lot as a coach, because my last book I wrote, Without Words, which is a lot of it is also on the same messaging, because that's one of the things I've really enjoyed about sound in space, is that you can essentially be this medium that creates a sound or creates a frequency, but it's not your frequency. Right. And the person who's experiencing the sound and the vibrations and the frequency, that's for their experience. And so you become very attentive to just making sure that there's like a flow, like there's something happening. That's how I've understood it. Whether that's how you meant it or how it was meant, I don't know, but that's how I heard it.
But that's even the whole, it's like a self-folding into itself like story, because it's like anyone involved in the arts eventually has to cop with this. And sports is another place where it happens, where it's like, the batter and the pitcher are locked into this thing. And as far as they're concerned, in that moment, it's like me and you, buddy.
Yeah, it's a dance.
And I don't care. I don't care what's going on over there. This fastball, you're not going to hit it. Right. And the hitter's thinking, like, you can throw anything you want. I'm going to smash that ball. But meanwhile, there's 40,000 people watching in real time there. Right. There's, I don't know what broadcast audiences are like this in, modern times for baseball. It's like, but the whole world gets to consume that. And like, whatever that is for you, mano a mano in that moment, the whole world takes that, and it's for them in a way too. And music is very much, a lot of famous producers talk about it. Artists talk about it. It's like, as soon as you publish the song, it's not yours. It's not yours. It's not like, it might have been for you in making it. You maybe really I needed to write this song to process, this big life transition, or to process this experience I had in my youth. And it's like, that's beautiful. And you can do that and you can have that. But as soon as it goes out to the public, like, you don't get, you can get mad about people misinterpreting your song, but it's like, that's just going to ruin your day. And it's not going to change. The audience is not going to care when you say, no, the line wasn't, I don't know. I don't want to come up with like a terrible example, but it's like
you nailed that.
If you mishear a lyric or something and you're like, oh, now you to interpret the song to mean something that it totally doesn't mean, but that's not going to change. Even if you find out like, oh no, they actually said like, whatever, eating really great sandwiches. I don't know what the line might be, but like whatever you heard, you can still hear it your weird way. And it can still mean that for you. And that's like, back to this, notion, everything is made up. Like nothing is even like really real. So what does it matter what they meant, versus how it gets interpreted,
Well, I think there's a lot in there that I absolutely love, which is one of the reasons why, going back to, I enjoyed your teachings then. And I knew we would jam. I mean, we really haven't hung out that much in our lives. We've probably spent like 5 days together. Yeah. And we vibe, right? I can feel that on other like artists in those lanes. And I've learned so much about teaching sports through people like yourself and musicians and other artists. And I have grabbed from so many different disciplines and packaged it into just baseball. Yeah. And to me, sport, in any sport, it's easy for me to talk about baseball because I've been in it my whole life. Right. But to me, it is art, and it's art. The reason why it's the entertainment factor of sport is that it's happening under spontaneity. So it's It's not a movie. Like, you don't know how it's going to end.
Right.
So the fans are going to the entertainment, and it is entertainment, especially as you get up the levels. Like, once you get up to the professional ranks, sure, is it baseball? Yes, but it's entertainment.
Right.
And it's an entertainment industry. And that's something that is difficult on athletes and people who have been in sports so long until they get to the big leagues, and you realize it's not high school and it's entertainment. You're an entertainer.
Yeah.
And so, but that's getting off track. The point of the thing is that I think what makes it so fascinating to watch is that you're watching art perform under spontaneous events, not knowing the conclusion.
Yeah.
If I go and watch a movie, I know how this movie is going to end before I even start it.
Right.
Now, it doesn't mean it's a bad movie, but you always know a rom-com is going to be the same thing. They're going to fall in love, they're going to break up, they're going to come back together. That's how it works.
Yeah.
You know, and in the middle, there's going to be humor, and people are going to cry, and then they'll come back together.
Yeah.
And sport is not like that. It's that's why it creates and it grabs so much natural emotion, and it pulls out these artistic things that happen in humans.
It's that shared experience of this narrative unfolding, and the audience is just as much in it. The batter thinks he's going to hit the home run, but he doesn't know. And the audience, the crowd, we don't know, and we're all there, chomping our popcorn, just like, let's find out. Let's find out what's going to happen. I've always, I like the parallel of sport and art. And I've been saying, it's kind of during the pandemic, I had so much time to sit around and think, and I really spent a lot of time reflecting on lots of stuff. And that was one of the big things that I was kind of focused on. There's so much divisive energy around at that time. And
where were you at during the pandemic? Were you
I was
in
here in
Minneapolis?
Minnesota.
Where you were in Minneapolis?
Up in Brooklyn Center.
So you were in the thick of it. Maybe
I'm
a little bit
far
of the
enough
outskirts.
north of like the protests and the riots and
because
stuff
the
like
George
that.
Floyd stuff was going on at the same time.
Wow, that was like
Minneapolis was intense for about a year and a half, 2 years.
I feel like, honestly, just now, 5 or so full years later, it feels like the city is finally like,
I agree.
Kind of everyone's kind of integrated,
healing,
sort of
coming
like
back.
what that all was.
Yeah,
and it's still very, very much there for a lot of people. A lot of people, I think, are still sort of like, we kind of just dissociated after that experience. Because like any trauma survivor will tell you, well, that's just, of course you dissociate. Of course you just, anything to just kind of like, I still got to get through my day. So I'll just kind of sweep it under the rug and I'll deal with that later. And it feels like most of people have now kind of, been able to kind of like,
I feel that,
sort through that stuff.
I haven't been back here for a few years.
Yeah.
So I was in the cities for the first time the other day in a few years.
Yeah.
And I felt it's different.
Yeah.
It's different than it was in 2018.
Yeah.
And before COVID, before the protests and the riots and those sort of things. But I will say it definitely felt different, and I don't think it can ever go back. I don't think anything ever goes back.
No, not all the way.
Right.
Yeah.
But I do feel like it had that Minneapolis buzz to it, a little bit different. But it had that, Minneapolis is an amazing city.
Well, that's why I keep thinking of it's like we've integrated that experience. I don't know that we've like healed or whatever, but like.
Do you think there's healing in as far as like a verb, like the action of healing?
Yeah, I think that's the beauty of any healing journey is that it's like it's never over until like the very end of it. So it's like always being, and again back to even like with sport in a movie, the ending is written. Now we're just gonna like go walk through it.
Sure.
And everything else, it's like, well, we're finding out what this is gonna mean, where this is gonna go. And, I think in the beginning days of like the early, like, I don't know enough about European history to really know. I just, in my mind, I'm imagining that was such a thrill to like these traveling shows would come into a town. And you didn't know, all of a sudden, like they're telling you this story of like, oh, this young minstrel met the prince or whatever, like narrative and story is so human. But during all that time, I had this appreciation that sports are just an embodied branch of the humanities. There's nothing more human than falling down and getting a busted lip and then getting up and running anyways, or the agony of defeat. I think for a lot of the people who are cynical about sports, it's because they've only ever experienced it through this entertainment lens. And they you know, if you've never struck out in front of your whole 6th grade class, don't tell me that sports is stupid. That is I'm like having a somatic moment remembering that's human. You'll go home and cry.
Oh yeah.
You know, and if you don't, then like, well, then I suggest that you didn't put enough on the line now, did you, young man? You know what I mean? Like, if you really care, what could be more human than caring that hard and striving and either succeeding or failing in front of the world? That's like so bold.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, it's like the best of, and because it's kinetic, it's physical, it's tangible, it is embodied. It's like, you know, somatics is like the buzzword of the mindfulness industries and the wellness industries and like sports all along. I think about this with the sound healing also, and I'm seeing this parallel in schools, like physical education departments. You know, we all know kind of the trope. It was like they were dominated by jock types and people who would like push you down a hill and laugh at you, you know?
Yeah.
And that is like, it's probably good that there's less of that maybe nowadays, although a little bit of that might be good for your soul. Sure. You know? Yeah. I think back to some of my embarrassing moments of childhood. I'm like, maybe I actually probably grew from that. But like if we could reframe, like physical education should be not necessarily so much sports and competition. It should be embodiment exercises, movement. You know, we could, you know, the debate about should yoga be in schools or not aside, it's like movement for the sake of wellness should be what physical education is. And I started realizing doing these sound bath trainings, I was like, this is what music education should be in schools. It shouldn't be about, can you play a Chopin nocturne? It should be, hey man, open up your ear. Here's a thing, hit that, and just do that a few times. I'm not going to tell you if you're good or bad at it. I just want you to do it and come to your own conclusions. Oh, I notice if I hit metal against metal, it sounds kind of metallic. And it's like, yeah, it does. Yeah. Because of course it would. Or with movement, you know, like, hey, I notice if I climb up high and then fall to the ground, it like hurts more. Yeah. It's like, yeah, it does. You know, the education should just be like immersion in these things, and then we can do whatever. Because so many kids, this could be part of your story, right? They in music classes, and because they can't play a melody on a trumpet, they get told like, this is probably not for you. Maybe you should go into math. Maybe you should go focus on sports. Maybe you should go focus on science. But it's like, no, maybe you shouldn't be a professional musician, right? But you should still learn to appreciate sound, because that's what music ultimately is. And maybe you're never going to be an Olympic athlete, but it's like, but you should still know what makes your body feel good and then go do that.
Well, that's what I was saying about what made me so nervous when I came to the sound retreat years ago, because I have no musical background and I don't think I have any musical skill, and that's okay. Yeah. And I also would not have been able to say that that's okay a few years ago. Yeah. Because it was exactly what we're talking about, right? I have now, when I was 153 pounds, I could throw a baseball faster than pretty much all of America. So I was going to go play Division I sports because I had a skill.
Double down on your strengths.
Yeah, I had a skill, and I was able to do something. Yeah. And so I was fortunate to play professional baseball because of that skill. And in the meantime, as I was harnessing that skill through my entire adolescence and into my young adulthood and into my mid-20s, other people were playing music. Yeah. And that's just the way life goes, right? But then you get outside of your skill and you're there's shiny objects. And it's like, who doesn't love sound? Like people love music. Music is so much of the language, in my opinion, it's the language of God in so many ways. Like music, how do you go to a live concert and people just start moving? Yeah. And the sound's in them and it can move them. So it's like, what is that? Yeah. And I was always curious about that. And now for a living professionally, I'm into human behavior. That's what I study. And I have to help people perform in the circus, right?
Yeah.
And understand who they are in the narrative. And that's a lot of the work, right? And so it's like, how do you get people to acquire space in chaos that allows them to explore who they are, which ends up becoming subjective and artistic, which most of the modern, everything that we do is quantified and measured in data and analytics. So it's hard to have artist vibe. It's hard to explore your subjectiveness in who you are, you know? And so I started finding that with sound, which I kind of told you the story earlier. But going back to my great fear, the reason why I was so nervous is because I was in a room with nobody that I knew. No one else that day was in sports, if you remember.
Yeah.
And I was in sports. And
that's an environment, right? I was going to say,
the environment was really intimidating to me.
Yeah.
And then I'd listen to you play like 20, 30, 40 different instruments and just knock them all down. And it was like, I have to go up in front of these people and play stuff because that was the deal, right? On Sunday, you had to play in front of the whole group. So I was nervous about that the whole week. Now, I've notoriously done things my entire life that I'm nervous to do. So there's like a little bit of a backbone to this. Like a lot of the reason why I was there is because I was nervous. And I was like, I got to go do it. And I have fun with the nerves, but I've had to train that in my own sense, but it doesn't mean I wasn't nervous. And I remember when I started performing the bowls on the Sunday for my session, I was shaking with the first, when I first had it in my hands. And I was like, I don't know if I'm going to even be able to play this because I'm going to be shaking when I come around the bowl. So I remember I went to my honey hole and I did breath work and I had everybody just start doing some breathing. And then everyone was breathing and they had their own sound. Then I started hitting the balls. And that's what warmed me up. And I did it. But I remember that was like a very nerve-wracking thing. But the whole, I keep going off thought. Maybe I'm not off thought, but I think the thing is what you're saying, because materially or at the surface, if you don't know how to play a guitar, you're not really allowed to talk music or think music. And I have no idea how to play the guitar. I don't even barely know how to play the drums. I don't know how to play the drums. But even today, when I was listening to you talk to me about the numbers and when to hit it, like that's enough for me. And I'm fine with that. And I'll use that. And I'll use that in my coaching. But it doesn't mean I'm not nervous. But one of the things that sound bowls have done for me is exactly what you're saying, which is why it's cool for me to listen to you talk about that. Because it has allowed me to... I don't even feel like I have to be anything good. I don't really care. I just enjoy the energy of it and I enjoy what it does to me and I enjoy what it does with people and I enjoy the space that it creates. And metaphorically, it makes people move. It might not make someone move like they do at a concert, but I've never been in a sound bath where people haven't just gone, oh, that feels good.
Well, I think you nailed the key word in all of that was like the enjoyment. And that's kind of what I was saying. It's like, PE class shouldn't have been this like traumatizing.
I've never thought about that.
Ode to your like failure to complete. I, as a 230-pound junior high kid, I was not climbing that rope. To be fair, no one taught me to use my legs. I didn't know like wrap your legs around it and like cinch it and then like scoot your way up. So fail on the school district to not teach me that. Like in baseball, I struck out. I bet my strikeout to hit ratio was probably like 100-1. I struck out so many times because the only thing my brain could understand was blast it to left field. Just yank. Not even a pull hitter. Straight Yankee Doodle dandy that sucker to left field. And no one ever said hit it the other way. And I go, oh man, I probably could have been like a 300 hitter.
Well, do you think that that's our lack of play? Because we don't allow ourselves to really play.
That's it. Yeah, totally. That's it. And it's like, especially now in sports, right? At 5 years old, people are like, oh, we're scouting this new kid down at the elementary school. And it's like, what? It's teaching kids just to enjoy sound. Don't worry about going to Juilliard. Just enjoy sound. Don't worry about, being don't worry about winning the race. Learn to enjoy the fact that you have two legs that work. Whoa, obviously you get old enough, with any luck, a little wisdom comes your way. But nowadays, I wake up every day and I just think, oh my God, I have 10 fingers. I hit the lotto. This is crazy. How lucky am I I've got 2 feet. Incredible. But it's like, we're all so lucky to have the littlest things. And you just, I don't know, perspective is a gnarly drug. But
there's a lot in the sound that I definitely want to like just full blown hammer you on. Yeah. But I know you've had that on your lap. Well,
you can hammer time. Too. We can.
Well, I was hoping, I'm maybe thinking, and the thing that I think I love about the two of us is I don't think we're super bought into structure. So
yeah,
clearly we tried to do astrology to start, and now we're talking about PE, and I love it. Yeah. I think out of the fact that I keep seeing it on your lap, sure. It's just on my head.
It's the right moment, maybe.
It's the right moment, and I feel like I don't want to disregard how much I intentionally also want to hammer you some questions after the astrology.
Perfect.
But I think astrology can maybe get us going.
Yeah. Well, and you actually kind of set up a really good segue for it when you were talking about your willingness. And willingness might even be too soft of a word. Like you're seeking out of like intense experiences.
Yeah.
And like, no, if this is uncomfortable, like let's definitely
I think what's about to happen might be for me. Well, I don't know if I've ever had an astrology reading.
It's so perfect because
I'm about to do it on a recorded podcast.
I know. We'll get into I'll go right into jargon. You have your moon sign is Scorpio, and your moon is also sitting exactly on your 4th house cusp. The 4th house cusp, to make it non-jargony, like symbolically, you could think of that as like what your entire personality or your whole psyche is standing on. It's the ground. So there's nowhere you would feel more grounded than in intensity. Like that's, if you're feeling like, man, I just don't feel like I know where my place is in the world. If you were ever feeling like everything is so changey and like I'm feeling the churn and the turmoil of the universe, like the first place your instinct would be to go is to like, what's the most intense thing I could do right now? That's like where you get grounded. For other people, it might be the total opposite.
Sure.
And they'd be like, when I'm feeling the pressure of change and feeling like really become like that, like mortifyingly, aware of like the existential bizarreness of everything. They might be like, the first place I go when that happens, I go right to my bed. I pull the sheets up to my chin.
Yeah.
Put on my eye mask. I go right into relaxation.
Yeah.
The extreme opposite. And the archetypes of those 12 signs, there's somebody who their figure ground place that they're built on or they go to, each of those signs could be that for any person. As a language, astrology is just interesting. You almost have to think of it as, the common misconception I hear people get into is like, there's only 12 kinds of people. But the thing is, we all contain all 12 of those archetypes in our psyche. The idea wasn't that you're one thing out of 12. The idea is you are all 12 of these things. And it's just a question of, like the music metaphor would be like, how loud is the guitar? Is the bass really loud? If it's techno, you got to turn the bass way up. That kick drum has to be super loud and pulsy so we can all feel the beat and move. That would be like having 6 planets in one sign. Like you are here to just be this.
Sure.
And other people are like really well balanced and it's all smoothed out. So maybe they don't feel, maybe they'd be like, oh, well, technically I'm a Leo, but like I don't really feel like a Leo. And it's just because, well, Leo's in the mix. Just like it's really well balanced in the mix. And other people would be like super turned up. And those are, I know they're probably actors in Hollywood who have that super strong Leo energy. If you get questions along the way, also just interrupt me and ask.
I was going to say, because you can't just throw that at me and now I got my brain going.
Yeah, he's like, what's a Scorpio boot? So let's cover this. Let's cover this. We'll cover the sun, moon, rising, because those are kind of like the common 3 that people talk about.
Okay.
The sun, true to the nature of the sun, right? It's the center of the solar system. In your chart, in your astrology, the sun represents the core of your being. Okay. It's something central to who you are. It doesn't matter if you feel like it. The point is that energy is like relevant for you. In your case, your Cancer sun.
Yeah.
And getting to know, again, we haven't really even hung out that much. Don't actually know that much. It's like today I'm finding out how it's like, oh man, Harvey's got this family. Like, heck yeah, which is, Cancer is very much connected to like family energy. The home is like a super strong Cancer theme. So it's like great to see Harvey, the Cancer sun, in a Cancerian environment of like the home with child.
Yeah.
You know, congrats.
Thank you.
To have a child. And it's like, that's a perfectly on-brand thing for a Cancer person to do. Maybe for a Leo, it's like kids might not be the best thing for you, maybe, or you know, it could, not to say anyone. The energies can work anywhere. It's the cliches and stuff aren't helpful, but it represents like something that's very central to the person. So then the moon, the good way to remember what the moon represents is that the moon doesn't make light; it reflects light, and in that same way, the moon sort of represents how we reflect what comes at us.
Is that the intensity one you're saying?
Yeah. Your moon is in Scorpio. So a lot of places on the internet will describe the moon as representing emotions. I like to say it represents your responses to emotions.
Okay.
Because there's not a person on earth, anger feels the same no matter who you are.
You sure?
Anger feels like anger.
The emotion of that.
The emotion of anger feels like anger. If you don't know what that feels like, congratulations.
Yeah.
It's not fun.
Right.
Sadness, grief, it feels the same to everyone. The feeling is the same. What you do when that feeling comes up, that's kind of what we're talking about. So for a Scorpio moon, your instinct may be, if I start to feel something really intense or like strong emotion, might be just like lean into it.
Yeah.
You know, I feel sad, so like let's get to the bottom of the sadness. Let's get all the way in there. I'm glad that we got to this because this also pinged something for me. I was going to say with, again, this kind of like parallel of like sports and music and like any kind of craft. I'm a firm believer the depth with which you go into any art form or any skill, any discipline, it comes with you when you go into something else. So if you've been to the bottom of baseball, which is why when you start playing with the sound bowls, you're already at the bottom of sound bowls. You might not consciously appreciate that because you're able to kind of get stuck maybe in the like, this guy's been playing music for 38 years. Like, whoa, who am I to like call myself a musician? But the depth that you have from this other thing translates. You know, you're always going to take that with you. I like to speak in terms of like the resolution of people's perception. Some people live life at like 10K. Everything is that dialed up for them. Going out to get a cheeseburger at Five Guys, and they're like, wow, it's like a really vivid, intense experience. Other people, you know, could have the most intense experience of their life, and they're just, it's like a 16-bit
It's all the
image,
uniqueness of us, right?
Yeah. So anyways, I digressed there for a second. But I
was-
wanted to appreciate more about Harvey's Scorpio moon.
No, well, one of the things that you're saying that I thought about today, I do have a lot of thoughts, but this one just came to me where you just said, you ever notice like a goose or like geese hiss at you if you ever walk by them?
Yeah.
And they're kind of like mean.
Yeah. They can be very mean.
They can be very mean. And then this morning I walked out in whatever, it was like 6:30 or so with my dog, and I saw these two beautiful ducks, and they weren't mean at all. Like they were, and I was thinking about that's so symbolic to people.
Yeah.
Like that's just who we are. Like some people are mean, some people are not mean.
Yeah.
But that was just a thought.
Yeah.
Kind of what you're saying.
There is something to that. Yeah. And like, you know, a lot of people get scared about astrology because it feels like this kind of like condemning to like, this is who you are. And it feels like a threat to free will. A lot of schools of astrology are like super into free will. Like they like deify it even. But the way I tend to work with it, I always say it's not an issue of nature versus nurture out here in the world. It's an issue of you have a nature, nurture it.
I love that.
So it's like if you are an angry person, like there's a way to reframe that. It's not necessarily just that you're angry. You might just have a lot of passion. So like let's not repress that energy in you, but let's find a way to like leverage it and make it useful. You know,
well,
if you've got a lot of fire,
Yeah.
that's good. If a guy with a lot of fire is exactly who I want starting Game 7.
Sure.
I don't want the guy who goes like, no, if we win, we'll see.
Yeah, I think about that a lot too. It's funny. My wife was just talking to me last night, maybe about my intensity. She always talks about how I get attracted on something and I focus on it until I go to its depths.
Yeah.
Like we had I don't remember, it was like 2 years ago or so. I was in a Bible study And I realized everybody in the Bible study was debating over Christianity, and none of us, from my knowledge, had read the entire Bible.
Yeah.
And I read the entire Bible.
Yeah.
I was just like, I got to read the entire,
Right.
and I'm not even with those people.
Yeah.
But that kickstarted
That just something
me.
had to happen.
Yeah,
because,
and I was like, I have to go read this whole
yeah,
thing.
these guys haven't been to the bottom. Someone's got to get there.
Yeah, and it was just like, it was in a small group. I'm not even with the group.
Yeah.
I don't remember who exactly was in the group. And then I got done with it, and my wife Chelsea had said to me, it was funny afterwards. There's a side of reading the Bible, and there's a part of where I've read the Bible from the whole thing, and I feel I love that I have, and I think everybody should. It's a beautiful experience. But the irony and the comical sense, and I'm going to tie this all together with what you're saying, is when I got done with it, Chelsea had said to me like a day or two before I finished, because I said to her, I was like, yeah, I'm going to finish the Bible tomorrow. I only have like 10 pages left. So I'm going to get up in the morning. Don't bother me. I'm going to finish this. And she was like, isn't it crazy how powerful your ego is, that you had a Bible study where you guys were debating religious topics, and you felt no one there had really digested and read the entire Bible. So you just read the entire Bible. And she called me out, and it hurt me. And that's why I love her. And I just couldn't say anything because it was right. And it's funny how that's kind of how it kickstarted. So it's not, the ego is not the worst thing ever, because if I didn't have the ego, would I have even started that path? And it did help me read the entire thing, which is a gauntlet, at least in my experience. It's a gauntlet of a book to read, and to only focus on that was pretty intense. But then at the end of it, like the process of reading it made me more of who I am. And I really loved that I did that, but it was out of ego. And so that's what I was going to say to you about intensity. It's like, so much of things that I've accomplished in sports or entrepreneurship or certain things has been the intensity, like my ability to focus. I have a really good focus, but it also can crush me, and it has crushed me.
Yeah. Everything has its
paradox.
Yes. There's two sides of that coin always. This is fun. Like, oh man, my brain is just going like ping, ping, ping. The intensity, that's probably a big, actually, I didn't know I was intense for 35 or so years.
Wow. Well, because we're everything, right?
Well, and it's just like, we only know ourselves. Your life experience is a baseline.
Right.
You just assume like this is just like how it is. This is hilarious. I say this all the time just in the world and conversations. It's kind of funny knowing this will be said on internet. But for many years, I can admit it egoically, I thought most people were dumb. I thought a lot of people were dumb and dull and slow. And it was during the pandemic, having all that time to be by myself, I realized, no, people are fine and regular. I'm just kind of cranked up. And I was like, oh, that's the deal. I am intense. And I never like associated or identified with that because I thought I was regular. Yeah. And so in my chart, Scorpio, where your fourth house is, that vertical axis in our charts is flipped. Okay. So I have your moon is sitting like right on the top of my chart. And anyways, so it's like I'm laughing now because I'm like, oh yeah, that's why like I can appreciate Harvey's like, no, let's make it deep. Let's go there. Yeah. Because it's not that you're going there, it's that you already are there. That's where you reside. Yeah. So it's like for you to go like, okay, we won't make it deep. You would have to go on like a road trip. Whereas for some people, they aren't naturally in that depth space all the time. So for them, it maybe is like, feels like, oh, I got to pack up the van. I'm like, okay, we're going to go to Harvey's depth land, That's been hard. That's been hard on me. Sure. So what you're talking about, how you had that perspective towards other people, because it's what you said earlier, it's all interpretation, right? Yeah. And how you interpret reality, it's different. Yeah. And I would say from my standpoint, I've massaged that and learned that, and I've had to really like aggressively work hard on being able to communicate at a wide range of people. That's one of the reasons why I started podcasting about 8 years ago. I used to write about this a lot, and I used to just say to myself, like, can you sit at the table
with anybody in the world and have a conversation.
Yeah.
And I just asked myself that as a question, and I just was like, pursue that question. Like it was for me. And it was like, it doesn't matter. Like I'm not trying to have a job out of that question. I'm not trying to get anything. It was a genuine question of like, am I capable of sitting with a wide range of people and sharing conversation? And so it was interesting then, and it still is appealing to me now, because the podcast became therapeutic to me, because it allowed kind of like a space to have like a depthy talk from a wide range of people.
Yeah.
But outside of the podcast, because I've never, I don't care what I'm about to say of this, but it's like, I've never cared if anybody listens to this the entire time.
Yeah.
I've never thought about that.
Right.
I've tried to edit. Even when I came at it this second time around, because I took a little hiatus and I've came back, I've like tried to put my head into like, I'm going to really edit. We're going to get really nice cameras. Like I'm going to make this, and I'm going to listen to them.
Yeah.
And I listened to like the first 2 or 3 that I did this winter, and I probably won't listen to this.
Yeah.
Likely won't at all.
There's a lot of beauty in that though. And like, I've always thought, that's why me personally, I was sharing earlier, like a lot of people I know have told me to like start a podcast. People want me to write a book. People want me to make YouTube videos. And I can appreciate from like a service place that like maybe I should. Sure. It might be a good thing that I could contribute to people. People have asked, they want it. It would be helpful for them. From a service place, it's like, okay, yeah, I could. But there's something about me that it feels, I don't want to rehash that. I don't feel like I'm on the edge.
That's what you said earlier about publishing things. Like once it's done, it's done to me. So I move on. And that's where I was going to go. Like this has always been kind of a comfort zone for me to have conversations. But back to that same thought.
And by the way, sport is also that way. Like a lot of sports fans know this feeling. I don't want to watch the game if it's over.
I can't do that either.
I don't care.
Wow, that's a good point.
I want to be there while it's happening.
That is so true. I can't do that.
Recording yoga classes.
I can't even watch recorded like innings. Like if I missed an inning and I have to rewind it and I know it's happening, I can't do it.
Yeah, who cares?
I just have to let it go.
Yeah, that's just what's happening right now. And it's like, that's that human, not everyone has it the same way, but I think probably we all do, but maybe to different degrees we're tapped into it. But it's like the drive to be present, the drive to be in fully immersed and invested and connected to what's happening right now.
Yeah.
I don't care what happened then. I'm willing to find out what's going to happen later. But like, I want to this at bat. I was at a Twins game with a couple friends. It was, I think, one of our friends' birthday. And so we all got together and went out to Target Field for this ball game, and I happened to run into a gal who at the time was taking my yoga classes at one of the gyms I was teaching at, and so it was kind of funny. We had a little like, oh, like hello, wow, and then maybe a day or two later, she paparazzi'd me and took photos and put them on Snapchat or something. It's like, oh look, everyone, it's my yoga teacher, and I laughed. It was so funny and, I don't know, affirming maybe. It was like a bit of like an ego boost thing, but like seeing myself watching baseball from the perspective of somebody else's camera was so awesome, because I was like, I look exactly the way I think I look when I watch baseball, which was like, I'm ignoring my friends. You can see I'm not paying attention to my friends. I'm like leaned in and I'm watching, I'm watching the pitcher. I'm watching this. I'm like, I realized I went to home opener this year with my sister. And I realized I was getting mad in between innings when people would get up, to go. And I can't fault them. That's the appropriate time to get up to go get a hot dog or a beer. But I was mad because I was like, I'm trying to watch the warm-up tosses.
Yeah, you're into it.
I was trying to see, and I could see good old Joe Ryan. He was not dialed in on opening day. Between innings, you could see him. The pitches were, and he was trying to figure it out. And I can't remember who he played. They won, whoever it was.
The Twins won or the other?
The other team, the away team. Root for the home team, and we did, and they did not win, and it was a shame. But
I feel like I want to know who I should know.
It might have been
who that was.
Maybe it was Baltimore.
I don't remember. They struggled to start the year.
But yeah, and it was. So I was watching the visiting pitcher, and he could see it in the warm ups. He was like just like dialed in. And I was like, oh crap!
That's sports. That's the beauty of it.
Yeah, he was locked in that day. Anyways, that was like a sidebar, which I'm full of.
Yeah, no,
we'll
this
go
is
to your
great.
rising sign
Okay,
because
let's do
it's a good segue. So your rising sign is Leo. The internet, the cheap astrology description says your rising sign is kind of like a social mask, is how they'll describe it a lot. It's like a first impression people will get of you. But the important thing to add on to that, it's not like unfair to make that claim. Usually the rising sign is what people will notice about you right away.
Okay.
Like first glance, if they don't get to actually talk to you, they might only get that impression of you. Like I was saying earlier, like I didn't know this whole dimension of Harvey. I didn't perceive Harvey as like a guy with a family. I knew Harvey as like a baseball player who's at our studio taking this sound workshop or whatever. But the rising sign is also really has a heavy impact on how you see the world. It's like the sunglasses you wear. So people can only see into your eyes through your sunglasses you're wearing, but also you're coloring your perception of the world through those sunglasses. So it's so awesome. Leo is can be notoriously like individualistic. They love the spotlight. It's like the cliche about Leo energy, right? And there's all these Leo sun signs out there in the world who are like, I don't love the spotlight. Am I not a Leo? Like, astrology must be fake. I hate being in the spotlight. But it's not that Leo loves to be in the spotlight necessarily. Some of them do. It's just that Leo wants there to be a spotlight. And the kind of Leo people who are like, I don't want to be in the spotlight, actually are probably the kind of people who love having other people be in the spotlight. So like you're saying, this one-on-one conversation space is peak Leo energy, because it's not just about everyone listen to Harvey talk.
Yeah.
It's Harvey gets to have a conversation with a person, and the spotlight gets to be on both people.
Yeah, I would agree
and that's
with
like
that.
super peak Leo energy. The other fun thing for you with your Leo energy is Venus and Mars are in a precise, we call it a conjunction, meaning in the night sky, if you would have looked out, they were in the exact like same spot. You would have looked at the same point in the sky to see them. And Venus and Mars, like, you know, broadly in the culture, we kind of understand them as like kind of feminine, masculine, archetypal energies. It's important.
Venus is feminine and Mars is masculine.
Mars is masculine. And it would be important to my mind to tell people when we say masculine and feminine, it's a non-gendered thing. It's more of like a mechanical function.
Yeah.
If you show me a girl who, let's flip it. If you show me a guy who doesn't have ears, I'll accept the idea that he's like very, very masculine. He has no feminine energy. The feminine mechanical function is input. It receives. The ears, they don't output. They're input only. So they are Venusian. They're feminine. People, whatever, the internet can get mad if they need to about my hot take on that. But it's interesting to see that you have them so closely connected because back again to kind of these like maybe comfort with paradox might be one way to like explore that.
I'm obsessed with paradox.
Yeah, I believe you.
Yeah.
I have that same configuration in the sign of Pisces. So when I see it in somebody else's chart, I'm like, you already understand something about me that anyone who doesn't have that probably can't grasp the same way. So in your case, it's like when you are outputting, doing the Mars function, for you, it's just as much a Venus function. Like the more output you're giving, the more input you're getting. And vice versa, the more input that's coming in for you, the more it almost is creating like an output. You could almost say that it's like inverted maybe in some ways for you. Like to speak is to listen in like a weird way. And to like listen is to speak, you know?
Yeah, no, I think that's like the high I get. That's what I was saying earlier when I've struggled with mostly conversation.
Yeah.
And I guess peeling back the layers, when I was younger, I remember having this exact feeling. I remember the visual. And I had two really good friends, two best friends of mine, who I just talked to one of them the other day, which is really cool. And I remember seeing them, and one was like the most popular kid in the school, and the other one was like really good at hockey And they were both really good at hockey, which in Michigan or Minnesota, you're kind of the dude,
good place,
right? Yeah. So, but he was like kind of in the shadow of this one, but he was like good at hockey and he was like really good. So people kind of like let him be. But this other guy was like savvy, right? He was like, had the cool toys first, like kind of had a swagger to him. And then I was in their group. So I was like not in the group, but I remember, no shade on these situations, but I remember it felt like everybody in the class that I was in did the same thing. And I felt like I couldn't relate because I wasn't seeing the way it seemed like the world saw the world.
Sure.
And I was so young.
Yeah.
So it was incredibly lonely.
Right.
Now on the flip side, I was also very shy and kind of lonely. But I was incredibly good at sports.
Yeah.
And when you're young, at these ages, I wasn't publicly playing sports yet. So I didn't have like I didn't have like a trump card.
Yeah.
So psychologically, everything just felt like I really wasn't. I don't know if maybe the accurate way is to say I didn't feel like I belonged, because I just remember feeling at a very young age like I just don't see the world like this.
Yeah.
Now there's an ironic part to the story which I've told on former podcasts. I was in single special educated, I can't remember, like specific curriculum type classes in my second and third grade where I don't know if misdiagnosed is the right word, but I wasn't, again, I don't remember all this. I would need like my mom and some of the notes. That was all part of it. But basically, like I was illiterate. I wasn't able to read at a third grade level or second grade level, all these things. And then in fourth grade, I end up coming out of those classes and I'm back in classes with everybody else in the school. And one of the things that was really unique was that I was working with a psychiatrist in third grade. And one of the things that was unique about it was she used to just put a picture in front of me and have me tell a story. And I would tell a story with no information, no nothing. It was just a picture.
Yeah.
And then I had to create a narrative, a beginning, a middle, and an end. And so she kind of like got this thing out of me. And when they integrated me back into fourth grade with the rest of the classes, I would tell a story. So one of my topics, Mrs. Shaw, who actually just passed recently, was my fourth grade teacher. She would allow me to go and pick the topic. And then 4 weeks later, I'd come back and I would share the topic to my classmates. And that was like one of my specific things. Now I did the normal class, but that was like something that helped me, I guess, find my voice. I don't know. But the reason I'm sharing that is that was those bulk years of my life. I remember feeling like I just don't see this thing. I don't understand that inside joke. I don't get why they're all doing the same thing.
Yeah.
I don't know why. So I reverted to pure silence.
Right.
I just didn't speak. That was hence why I was like, this guy's illiterate, you know? And so the irony of that is I remember bits and pieces of that when I really like peel into my memory. And I've done a lot of work on myself to kind of forgive that little boy in myself and sort of be like, okay, like part of life. We were talking before we got on the podcast. It's hard being a kid.
Yeah.
And I think that as I've gotten older, one of the things, talking about paradox, one of the things, and the guy who's a really good friend of mine, Tyler Beatty, I just had him on the podcast the other day. He's staying with us for the summer. He plays baseball here for the Saints right now. And he was asking me, like, how do you think or come up with your jams, or like what you're going to teach, or what's the thing? And it's a hard question to answer, but I've had some time after the podcast to kind of think about his question. And I think as I've gotten older, not meaning this I feel like I mean this in a very neutral way, but very neutrally, I feel like I've had an understanding that this is an illusion.
Yeah.
And in the illusion, I can kind of express myself not by telling people who I am. I can express myself through my curiosities. And so as I've matured and become more comfortable, example being I'm going to go to a sound bathing retreat, I could care less if my industry that is made up to begin with, thinks that that's odd. It doesn't matter because I'm not part of the industry anyways. I'm just a thing, a made up organism in an illusion. And I just happened to be good at this illusion when I was young, and it became my network, and it became where my parents played. My dad was in baseball, my uncle was in the big leagues, and like that's what my path was. And I'll learn most about who I am through baseball because that was just how the cards were laid out. But I feel like I was able to grip that, especially when I got released. I was able to understand it was an illusion. And once I was able to comprehend the truth of the illusions, I found expression of comfortability through just being curious about things. Rather than thinking I'm different or you're it was just like, I'm just curious. And I found a lot of peace in that curiosity because it's allowed me to meet people like yourself, or it's allowed me to travel around the world and feel comfortable and stuff. And instead of me feeling like I feel like different or lonely, I'm more, that paradoxical has shifted to I'm curious. And during the curiousness of all this stuff, more of me, I feel more comfortable being myself.
You're able to release more of who you are, the more you're letting in what genuinely moves you. And it's just like this nice flow.
It's nice, and it feels nice, and it motivates me, and it inspires me. And because of that, I feel like I've kind of reversed a lot of the early stages of my life, and I rode that young boy's ego all the way out until like my mid-20s. And it just got exhausting. Because the reason why it's fascinating when you talk about the shades, because I feel like in my 20s, I wasted so much time and energy, and I was angry trying to tell the world what my shades looked like. And I was so intense about that that I was just gonna do whatever it took to try to convince you and the world what it looks like.
Grab them by the collar, like, hey, don't you get it?
And then I also think because of the ego, which I don't discredit the ego. I'm very appreciative of these egotistical sides of my past. But I feel like my intensity, like I was telling you, when I got to the big leagues, I never coached in the minor leagues, and I didn't go through any of the curriculums to get into a medical staff in Major League Baseball. The only way I was able to achieve that is because of the pure intensity that I had. And I had that for nonstop until I got there. And I genuinely thought at the time that I would change the world and create a holistic health medical industry in America through sport. That was what my brain genuinely thought for a long time. I was like, if I get to Major League Baseball, which is my only avenue, and I go into the health industry, and we turn it into a holistic, very root-driven healing practice. Well, it's top down. You see, all of us when we were kids, we watched the Twins. And so I always thought if the Twins walked barefoot and do breath work and listen to sound baths,
the kids pick that up right away.
Then PE will be this, and these kids will do this. And in a mystical, egotistical, like fantasy type of way, I do think the humanity has gone that way anyways, and I hope that still in a way happens. But as part of the illusion, that even in and of itself was an illusion, and once that was able to leave, I was able to be even more peaceful. But all of this has been like killing off parts of what intensity has driven and what my shades have driven. Because I've spent a significant amount of my time trying to justify what my shades look like. And when I was younger, I didn't know A, how to articulate what I was seeing, and then B, I just felt odd that I didn't feel like I saw the way you saw the world. And that was very confusing to me.
Well, I can relate to that. It is. It's isolating for sure.
Because
you just go like,
I can tell you
how
feel
come
that.
Like, how do you guys not like, how do you not get this? That's what I meant about like, I spent so many years thinking people were like not with the program, only to realize like, oh, it's not that they're not with the program. It's just, I'm on a different program. I'm in a whole different, like, I'm in some weird side quest universe that's like, and it's no one's fault, like the wisdom of age also gets you there. You can kind of appreciate like no one did this to me, and like no one's causing this. This is just like how it is. And in the long run, it becomes an asset, you know, like all that time in introspection and silence that you spent, which for that young child maybe really kind of felt traumatic and probably did feel really lonely. But it's like, that's also probably a huge part of why you're able to work with the sound instruments well, because you're willing to like not say something and to just, okay, I'll just not say the thing, and I'll just, you know, we can all just like listen to the silence. The most people, this is again what's so like kind of ironic. We're circling back a little to where we began, where people are afraid to hear their own voice, but the only thing they're afraid of more than to hear their own voice is silence.
Yeah.
You know, some people cannot hang in a silence. And, you know, I was out on a golf course with a nonprofit group on Monday, and the guy who I was paired up with in the cart, he's, you know, got his little portable speaker attached to the golf cart, and maybe I should have said something, but I was just like, oh, this is like ruining my afternoon almost. Like when I play golf, I'm out there because I want the silence. I want to listen to the wind, and I want to hear the grass, you know, and I want to hear the trees. And that's like, I'm listening to like Kesha, and, you know, it was just some mix. I don't know if it's like his personal, I don't want to, but Kesha definitely happened at least once. Yeah. A bunch of DMX and stuff, you know, it's just like, man, this is like the opposite of what like I play golf for. But it's like, I think it's important for him to have, I don't think he was going to be okay in the silence. He wanted that there. And it's like, I can respect that. But, you know, for me, silence is like the best. I just love it.
Yeah, me too.
Oh man, I could sit in silence I struggle when I have to teach classes sometimes, because I walk in and I go, wouldn't it be better, everybody, if I just didn't say anything? Like, wouldn't we get more out of this if I just didn't talk for an hour? Yeah. You know? And then I'm like, oh wait, people paid to be here. Like, I'm supposed to, you know, like,
facilitate.
Okay, yes, like namaste, welcome. And then I'm like, okay, then we can go. But speaking of paradox and the illusion too, I'll take the opportunity to like segue into like a Tai Chi thing. Yeah. Because, you know, and again, to this day, I still do a little bit of that collar shaking, trying to change people's mind about how they think about Tai Chi, because we all have the idea that it's the slow motion exercise that like the grandmas and grandpas do in the park. And while it's true that grandmas and grandpas do Tai Chi in the park, you know, the literal translation of Tai Chi would be something like the Great Paradox, the polarity, the supreme duality. And I'm getting ready to on Monday do a little introductory lecture on this subject. So I'm trying to really like tighten how I frame this, and I'm realizing that I think, whatever, people can have their interpretation of it. I'm finally getting to the age where I'm like, I'm not going to battle you guys. You can think whatever you want about this. But the way I work with it and hope to impart to people if they work with me in this subject is to realize that like a Tai Chi practice is really a practice of altering your perception, is fundamentally what it is. You know, if I look at the tea mug from over here, I get like a whole sense of what it is. But if I really take a moment to appreciate the tea mug looking back at me, so to speak, maybe it literally is, maybe it's not. But just like if I can put my own perception in the teacup and then kind of stare back at myself, I get a whole different experience of who I am. Or to say, it's like one of the guys who comes to one of my classes, he's a computer guy, and we were talking computer science and quantum computing. And I was kind of trying to come up with some metaphors for him. And it was sort of like, you know, if I wanted to like explain myself from where I am, I go, oh, I'm this thing. I got 2 hands, I got 2 feet, and a couple knee, you know. I only need so many data points to explain what I am from where I'm standing. But if I was going to calculate or try to explain to you what I am by virtue of what I'm not, we would need way more information. Think about like if you're trying to find a line on a circle and you go, well, it's this point and this point are connected. So 2 points of data tell us this is the line. But if we say, if we're going to calculate the line from the other way around, we need 358 points to say, okay, it's not in any of these 358 points. Therefore, the line is here. And that's like an impractical way to calculate because it takes so much longer. You need more data, but it's more precise because we can know that the line is on these 2 points, but we can't verify if there isn't another line on other points. If we only measured the one thing, there's definitely a sports analogy in here somewhere, but I'm not going to dig for it in this moment. I'll just say that, in the Tao Te Ching, which is kind of one of the books of the Taoist philosophy out of which this whole idea of Tai Chi comes, it opens up. The very first statement in the book says, when you say Tao, that's not the real one. You can't articulate this thing because the second you articulate it, you've already missed the mark. And to kind of what you were saying earlier too about like what Tai Chi really wants us to understand is that there's a dynamism to everything. So the classic interpretation is that the sun is yang and that the moon is yin. But as soon as you defined those two things as yang and yin, you've already missed the point. The point would be more that the sun is yang and it is yin. There's both things to it always. Sure, the sun is hotter than the earth, but the sun is not the hottest star in the universe. So if we're going to use heat as the way to say, oh, the sun is yang because it's hotter than the moon, well, then what does that make the stars that are hotter than the sun? And then suddenly when you put the sun next to those other things, now the sun is yin. And baseball is like, I've been rewatching the Ken Burns baseball documentary because it's just like so golden. But there's a really great point they bring up, which is the perfect kind of exemplar of what this Tai Chi idea is sort of like toying with. They go, baseball is the only sport where the defense has the ball. And it's like, that's some like peak Tai Chi stuff.
Yeah.
Who's really running the show here? You're on defense. So does that mean like you're, in every other sport, if you're on defense, they have the ball. But it's,
Well, what is that? What do you take from that?
I don't know. I just I just got excited about that.
I've never heard that analogy. I've been in baseball my whole life.
Oh, really? You should check out that Ken Burns documentary. It's gold.
I guess
maybe you. I would imagine you probably heard it, but it just didn't stick for whatever reason. It didn't.
No,
land.
yeah, I'm sure. Well, let me say this to you and see what you think on that same concept. So one of the things I've come to understand, and I feel like the Tao has helped me a lot with this understanding, is the first question I ask in my last book is, who am I? And I go to two types of people answer that. One tells you who they are and the other one contemplates, because you know that you can't be the thing.
Yeah.
Like I can't be this character. And so I've thought a lot about that.
Love that.
And I've asked myself, what does that mean? What does the concept of that mean? It's the same thing with paradox, right? It's like I had two guys in town this week who both play baseball, and one is doing unbelievably good and the other one is doing unbelievably bad.
Wow.
And I got to talk to both of them on 2 separate days. And I told them both the same thing. And I'm going to obviously protect their names, and I don't want them to be able to know that, well, whatever. The parts of this is like, the guy who's doing really good, this could be the worst season of your career and you don't even know it.
Right.
And the guy who's doing really bad, this could be the best season of your career and you don't even know it.
Yeah.
And because sport and materialism in society has to be contracted in through duality, has to be contracted in through paradox.
Yeah.
I think what I'm going to throw it back to you. I think what I've understood is that the way I package it or frame it is like my soul, which is the contemplation part, is the balance in the Tao, right? Or the whole. That comes into a human experience and experiences the contract of duality. So my ego, mind embodied ego, the physical form of myself, ends up experiencing paradox, which when I read the Tao Te Ching, that's all it is, right? It's all paradoxes.
Yeah.
So, but then the ego wants the experience of the soul. So how I've understood that is like they both need each other, the nothingness and the somethingness. They need each other, just like the sun needs the earth.
Yeah.
And is there a sun without the earth? Is there an earth without the sun?
Right.
Is the earth without us, or are we the earth?
Yeah. The context of whatever is like you have to incorporate all the data to really be able to say with any certainty what's going on.
Right.
There's a great story that kind of illustrates the dynamism of Tai Chi.
Okay.
And the way we experience that paradox of good and bad. It is a famous story, but there's a farmer, and one day his horse runs away, and all the neighbors go like, "Oh, so terrible." And he goes, "Well, maybe."
Yeah.
And then the next day the horse comes back with 3 wild horses, and the neighbors are like, "Oh, so great." And he's like, "Well, maybe."
Yeah.
The next day his son is out, working with the new horses, gets thrown off the horse and breaks his back. And the neighbor's like, "Oh, so terrible." And he's like, "Maybe."
Yeah.
The next day the army comes through, drafting the young men to go fight a war, and they're not going to take this kid with a broken back. And so it's like you start to see this what's good, what's bad, and it all sort of depends on, where are we going to go? If you want to have the experience of hitting like 500 for 6 weeks and then crashing and having your average end up at 250,
right?
Is that good? If that's what you want, then that's a win. Or do you want the experience of going, man, I was like sitting at like $125 all season, and then after the break, I just went on a tear and hit 800 till the end of the year.
Yeah.
Like, do you want the up arc? Do you want the down arc? Do you want to live level and steady? Do you like to go high and low? I mean, I don't know that you can control which one happens anyways, but, always kind of being able to zoom out. Another good metaphor of Tai Chi is like with photography. You zoom in and you can see the tiniest details, but now you have no clue what's going on around it. Or you zoom way out and you're shooting like f20, and it's like you can take in this huge wide landscape where you're getting a lot of stuff, but you might lose some of the granular details. So certainly a classic idea in sports psychology. You have a bad game, one bad game. Tomorrow, forget it. That didn't even happen. It doesn't really matter. But that said, you could decide that it does matter and fold it into the tapestry of this bigger story. But you have to appreciate, I was thinking about this all week with the golf group that we were working with, because a big component, it's a group, I don't know, I'm sitting in the weird balance of like, am I protecting somebody's like privacy, or am I not shouting out an organization that's doing, the organization is Next 18, and they're doing very important work for veterans, first responders. And a lot of it's working with moral injury, trauma, people who have had to do things and have certainly seen things that people in an ideal world, no one would see something like that. And no one would have to do stuff like that. But trying to realize, in the case of golf, and it's true in all sports, you can hit the best drive of your life, and all that's doing, to your point, it's setting you up to then just shank it into the water. Mm-hmm. And you can hit a terrible drive and then hole it out on the next shot.
Right.
So always understanding that you don't know where this is headed. So just like chill out. There's only one way. There's only one way to be down 0-2 and hit a home run. And it's to go down 0-2.
That's it.
Otherwise, you can't be in the hole 0-2 and hit the home run.
Right.
And there's only one way to be up 3-0 and still strike out. You had to get up 3-0 first. So like we just always appreciate that we don't know the broader context of what this is. And yeah, you lose home opener, but maybe you win the World Series.
Right.
I remember, what year was this? Maybe it's like 15 or so years ago, is the Super Bowl, Colts and Bears. And if I'm remembering correctly, the Bears returned the opening kickoff, Devin Hester, like 103 yards for a touchdown. I went, oh, the Bears are going to lose. That moment, I was like, that's not a good sign to start that good. My own personal inclinations are like, you don't want to start that hot. That's a problem. And then when the Vikings were playing the Eagles, I don't know, that was maybe 4 years ago or something now. The Vikings, it was right after that Minneapolis Miracle with Stephon Diggs. And I just remember thinking, we went down the field in like 3 plays. And it was a touchdown to Kyle Rudolph. And I went, oh no.
Yeah, we're going to
lose this game. And in retrospect, I think the Eagles coaching staff told their defense to like lay an egg on the first drive.
Yeah, let them score.
Let them have an easy one, get all hyped up. And then we'll just, I don't think we scored another touchdown the rest of that game. I think it was like 3 field goals after that.
So where are you at with energy work then, and things like Reiki and those sort of practices?
Definitely a believer. I'm like we were sharing from childhood. I think I've clearly always been like a little askew of the norm. That's an Aquarius theme, and I'm happy to be a walking trope. But the real moment that it clicked for me was in college. I had signed up for the fall semester down at Normandale and Bloomington.
Okay.
And I registered for a Tai Chi class to fulfill the health requirement in the state's like education requirements. The professor's name was Dr. Smiley. So I thought, well, either this guy's going to be the biggest jerk on earth,
or the man,
or probably will be the man. Yeah. We'll find out.
Yeah.
Fortunately, he did prove to be the man.
Love that.
Which was really great. But so probably like a week before the semester was going to start, I was with a buddy. We were hanging out, and our summer ritual that summer was like every night we'd go get a bottle of whiskey together, and we'd drink it, and then
whatever,
end up wherever we're going to end up. And
yeah.
So this one night, I'm a chronic stay awake all night kind of character. He probably passed out at like 3 or something in the morning. I was over at his parents' house with him, and I'm still awake. It's about 7 in the morning now. The birds are out.
Jeez, wide so you awake. Really do stay up.
Oh yeah. I think it's some old tribal thing of being like one of like the vigil keepers overnight.
I think that's the artist in you too, though.
It's definitely also that, yes. I'm like, when it gets quiet, suddenly I can hear.
Think.
And I'm just like, oh man, I got ideas.
Yeah.
But so at any rate, he had passed out. I'd been sitting around just bored for like 4 hours. And I was like, I got to get out of here. Probably shouldn't have driven because I was under 21.
Yeah.
Don't tell anybody. Kids, don't drink. If you can help it, don't do it.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, I got nothing better to do. I'll go pick up my books for the semester and then go see what's up. So I grabbed the books, drove back to my parents' house where I was staying at the time. And then by then, when I got there, headache, the fatigue is kicking in. I felt terrible, but it's like 9:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
It's so bright. Everyone's awake. The house is buzzing. And I was like, oh no. So I was like, okay, well, we're still awake. We'll just like start looking at these books, get a head start on the semester. I pulled out the Tai Chi book, which was like 20 pages. It was so
That's why
thin.
You pulled it out.
Yeah, and lots of pictures. So it was like, okay, here's some light reading we can do. And I started working with the little exercise in the beginning of the book. I mean, I like to tell the story that it was 5 minutes. Realistically, it could have been more like 10. I don't actually know. But it was not that long that I did this little exercise in my room. And I realized, and then I kind of like paused and I was like, whoa, I feel great. Like, I just drank fresh squeezed pineapple juice on the beach. I feel better than I've ever felt, which is weird because like 7 minutes ago, I was walking death.
Yeah.
And now I feel like ready to roll. So that really opened my eyes.
Sure.
And I went into the semester like basically like desperate for answers. I was like, somebody tell me what the heck that was.
What was that feeling?
What was that experience? How did that happen to me? And, kind of a few more experiences along those lines over the time. And the fact that Dr. Smiley proved to be the man,
that helps.
Very much helped. And he was really supportive. And he told people, you're signed up for, I think I was in the Tuesday, Thursday afternoon class. And he said, if you want more practice, you are invited to come to the Monday, Wednesday class. You can come to the Thursday evening class. You can come to the weekend community ed classes. I went to all of the classes for the rest of that semester. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Yeah, you were into
Thursday night, Saturday morning.
He just let you come to all of them.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because I was just all in. And I think he was astonished that anyone cared this much.
Yeah, that's
and he was
why
probably
he was
delighted to,
right.
have a student that was that passionate. And like you, I mean, when I saw that, I went, I need to know. I need to know what this is. And I will do what it takes to get down to the bottom of it. So I don't know, that was about 20 years ago. I've logged thousands of hours of practicing and teaching and learning and studying.
You still have the same love for it?
Yeah, I can't get rid of it. I mean, it's just like in there. What's been interesting, like I was kind of alluding to earlier, is that the physical practices have become a little, I'd be a liar if I didn't admit that like I'm not quite as interested in pursuing the physical practices as much. I'm grateful that I did go that hard with them because, the muscle memory of it and the
You learn
body's
the
ability.
mechanics of it.
And the body's ability, meditation practice, we're finding these same things, the kinetic, physical, and neural grooves that come with doing repetitive work of anything. You kind of build like permanent pathways.
Yeah.
So, and like in our chanting experience that we got to have earlier, it's funny because when I first found the chanting practice, I would do it for 2 hours every morning by myself in my living room.
Wow.
Every day, because I just couldn't get enough. I just loved it. And of course, after 2 hours of doing anything, you're kind of in a trance or a zone. And I find now I can get right back to that same place that used to take me about 2 hours to go. I can get there in 60 seconds.
Yeah.
You just give me a minute and I'll be like, let me do with like 3 ohms and I'll be stoned as a gourd. I'll just be gone. And it's like, wow, that's so in that way, like the Tai Chi practices, the physical practices, the deep relaxation I learned how to access through the intensive training, I can now just
You can get there.
you say, hey, everyone, let's all relax. And I'll go, okay, like how relaxed are you guys going to get? Because I'll probably be, like 3 steps past that. Like I've logged some hours. So the physical practices and training is not quite there at the same level, which is one of the reasons I do still enjoy teaching, is because it kind of forces me to keep up with that.
Yeah.
Because the philosopher in me, the academic in me got really obsessed with Tai Chi as this broader concept, which, as it turns out, is, as best I can tell, precisely what quantum mechanics. Tai Chi was a description of the quantum state. It's not 1 or 0. It's not a binary. Both things exist. It's not this or that. It's the superposition. Schrodinger's cat is neither alive nor dead. We don't really know, and it doesn't matter until we need to check, and then it'll be one or the other in that moment. And that's really what Tai Chi is describing. I don't know how much you do or don't like have dabbled into like the field of like this idea of, the wave function collapses when we observe or measure, and then we get an answer. But before that, it's like all these things were just floating as like a cloud of possibility.
Yeah.
We don't really know what it is. And realizing that that's really what Tai Chi was trying to describe to us all along.
Wow.
Tai Chi they weren't ever describing like move slow. Wow. They were trying to tell us, hey man, like this whole thing is a little more slippery than you think. And so if you, to go to like the biblical metaphor of it, it's like if you build a house on sand, don't be shocked when the sand shifts and your house falls down. Like,
so then with that metaphor, what is Tai Chi accomplishing?
Liberation, maybe.
Well, I'm saying in
a physiological sense, oh man, there's a couple different ways we could kind of think about it, right? On the one hand, at like a kind of purely physiological level, here's why we practice. We move slow, but we do stillness fast, is one way I describe it to people. We're not moving slow so that we can move slow. We're moving slow so that we can move fast, is part of it. And a baseball, again, is another perfect kind of exemplar of that, because like there's so much stillness in the game or slowness that most people literally can't stand it.
Yeah,
to the point that they implemented a pitch clock, which I will once again say that's a hill I'm going to die on. I think it ruined the game. This is also in the Ken Burns documentary. They talk about one of the things that makes great baseball so great is that it is timeless.
Well, it did ruin the game.
Yeah.
It's just the game
it fixed the entertainment dimension,
and it's
ruined
an entertainment industry.
The
so
heart
it took
of
away
it,
the art,
the spirit of the game.
It's the same thing that's going to happen when they automate the strike zone. It'll take away the art.
Right, there is something beautiful about knowing that umpire can just go like, I don't want that to be a strike.
Well, so I want to stay on that. I had something I was going to ask you, because you just got me going on another thought too. What were we saying right before?
The movement is slow. The stillness is fast.
I was going to say I've always communicated to athletes in baseball, it's the slowest game to watch, it's the fastest game to play.
Yeah.
And it's exactly what you're saying.
Right, exactly.
Like you as an entertainer, you see the right fielder never move.
Right.
Maybe it doesn't even get a ball the whole game, which is possible.
Yeah.
and hits
I was relegated to right field a few
there
times
you
in my
go.
life.
And
I know.
hits every 45 minutes. So in reality, like they really didn't do anything, and it looks so slow, but it's the fastest game to play because of our minds.
Yes.
But then back to what I was going to say to you, and we can use this baseball to stretch it back out to what we're talking about, is it's one of the things that I really like about sound bowls and instruments, and you said this earlier about how just play it. Doesn't matter if it's good or bad. Like just play it and feel it. I think one of the things that I've really enjoyed about sound, and I think that I saw this a lot in the breathing space, because when I first got into the breathing space, like we were saying protocols are for sheep earlier. Mitch loves that.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why is because when I first started sauning, for example, and especially over in Finland, like we were talking about, they don't have everyone I've sauna with over there and Estonia or whatever, they were never sitting there going, what's the clock?
Sure.
And what's the science say?
Yeah, they're not interested in that.
Right. And if you go here, it's like you can't, if you go to any wellness
give me the
center,
double blind.
Yeah, give me the thing. And on the side of the sauna, it says like the 5 bullet point Google AI
description
of what this is, right?
Yeah.
And so then people marry protocols. And I was very fortunate because I didn't get exposed to that. I wasn't exposed to protocols. I was doing, at least in the human performance industry, sauna and cold wasn't a modality until a few years ago. So in
Isn't that crazy how that popped?
So in 2015, that was not a modality.
Yeah.
And breathing was not a serious modality. So being able to do stuff without protocols was my favorite time ever, because it was pure art.
Right.
There was no commercialization to it. Saunas weren't getting diluted and commercialized.
Yeah.
People weren't pumping out extra cold tubs and trying to commerce the whole thing.
Right.
I do think that's what's you probably know way better than I do think that's going to happen if it's not already happening to the sound bowl industry.
It seems like it's
going to start happening.
Yeah. I mean,
well, it has to happen once it hits. That's what I'm saying about the baseball.
Yeah.
Like,
and anytime anything gets to like the mainstream culture, it goes through that. You could call it a birth or you could call it a death. It's certainly a transformation. And I didn't read the article, but there was a website that I think someone on Instagram that someone posted about that kind of piqued my interest, because it's a little bit clickbaity statement, but you know, the point really does stand. They had said that the yoga industry is dead. And I was like, whoa, that's like a, kind of bold statement. And then, but the real point they're making is it's not so much that it's like dead, but it's just the mass culture is over yoga. The only people who are doing yoga now are the people who really
do yoga,
really are into it, and as a fad, it's over. So I think sound baths are going to any day now
be a fad.
Hit that moment where it's a fad, it's trendy, it's everywhere, it's saturated. And then eventually it'll probably kind of like fade back out of that. And we'll see again. I think that's
what's happening with Sauna Game.
Yeah, I would imagine. I mean, there's like 17 sauna cold plunge studios in just the Twin Cities alone.
Yeah.
And it's like...
Yeah. And
you do have the people who are like the entrepreneurial minded, the capitalist spirit, not in a bad word.
Sure.
I'm not afraid of capitalists. I think... Never mind. I'll
keep
my foot out of my mouth. Yeah. But, the people who see like, oh, here's an opportunity to like start a business, to like, like there's always going to be that with anything. And I don't think it needs to be so bad. It's easy for the people who have that egoic investment of like, I was doing this for 30 years before everyone found it. And we can sometimes see like sacred keepers of the art. That's like, I have that sometimes with Tai Chi and yoga practices. Yeah, where it's like, man, I see you guys cheapening this. You're not really understanding the heart. And because you've gone so deep, because I went so deep in these things, like you really do feel like, you kind of do want to be defensive and protective of the thing and the core of it. But, that's a losing battle.
That's why I feel like I was telling you earlier.
Yeah. The better way to approach it is, and this is how I try to be with everything that I've gotten involved in and have been passionate about over the years. It's like, I feel like I'm just a signpost on the path. And it's like, hey, you're here because it's trendy to be here. If you want to go deeper into this, I can tell you, you can either work with me, I can take you plenty further than where the moment is culturally, but if but I can direct you where to go. Oh, do you want to really stick only with the most orthodox, the most strict like version of this? I know where to like, oh, read this book, go to these people, go to Finland. If you want real sauna, go to Finland. Or, if you want to stay very casual about this, then I can even help you figure out how to do that, because like you're saying, if you come to the table with me, whether you're the most casual of casuals or the most like intense and like we're getting in there, kind of maybe even bordering on like the neurotic obsession with the thing, like I can like work with you no matter what.
Yeah.
I'm happy to support whatever level of investment you're going to have.
I think I like how you said it's a losing battle because it's not worth fighting. It is what it is. I think the whole thing that kind of makes it a little bit tougher in a thing like baseball is like when they make the strike zone automated, it'll make the game faster, more fair, all these things. But
it will make it more fair.
But it takes away the art of watching a catcher take a pitch and put it in the zone, and that is art, and it's beautiful, and there'll be no need for that. Yeah. It's the same thing with the pitch clock. Like the slowness of the game was all these small details inside of it that made it so beautiful because of how artistic it was. Yeah. And that's what I'm saying.
And it was an art of timing and rhythm.
Yes.
And they ruined that part of it. I can't bug you out as a hitter.
But for commerce and marketing and entertainment, it had to change because it was a dying sport.
We need 3-hour block that we can rely on.
Yeah. And that's where I say the thing that I like about the sound bowls is I think breathing and everything that got protocoled out, it sped up so fast that it became about, well, what's the perfect practice? What's the perfect breathing protocol? What's the right amount of sauna? And that's just not how I was introduced. I was introduced to all feel. Like there was no like.
Well, and that goes back to this nurture your nature thing, right? Because it's like the best protocol of diet for someone who comes from, let's say,
nurture your nature.
From an Inuit culture.
Yeah.
Your body is optimized to literally eat nothing but whale fat.
Right.
So like, what are you doing eating popsicles? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, someone else comes from, I don't know, I guess I don't know enough about like the jungle indigenous cultures. Like there's a lot of fruit and stuff there. So like people talk about like eating these like high fruit diets. Well, that makes sense if you're coming from if your DNA or whatever is like wired to like run on nothing but mangoes and, fruit this could technically get me in trouble, but I'm going to just do it anyways for the thrill. I personally do enjoy the term Oriental. I don't know why I like that. I don't find it offensive at all. It like feels comfortable to call myself that. So as a man of the Orient, the Far East, Korean descent, whatever.
Yeah.
Dairy is not
part of it.
It's not part of the culture, and sure enough, I am lactose intolerant, indeed. And it's like, but of course. I'm meant to eat fish and rice and like a little bit of beef or pork maybe, or like small, like chickens and things like that. That's like what's there. That's what this biological system is wired to consume. Now, the ego or the soul, clearly my soul must be like Italian because I could smash some pasta.
Oh, I could smash some pasta. And I haven't eaten really today, so that sounds so good.
Yeah.
Well, do you think that, okay, let me ask you this question from an Eastern heritage.
Yeah.
Because being a white American Midwestern male.
Yeah.
Sometimes that was another thing that made it maybe intimidating in the sound bath game. And I would say sound bath is probably the most aggressive intimidation to me, because one of the reasons I went over to Finland and Estonia and did that stuff is so I could kind of feel it.
Yeah.
Because I knew I was in the saunas and cold, and I knew if I swam in the Baltic Sea, I would just feel different.
Yeah.
And
there's only one way to swim in the Baltic Sea.
Right, you got to do it.
And it's to go to the Baltic Sea.
And I've always felt like that in ways of traveling. I mean, most of my traveling experiences have been to go and do that, right? Yeah. And that's how I've made decisions largely. But one of the things we were trying to, then we had a kid, we were going to go to Japan. And one of the reasons why I largely want to go to Japan is because when I hit a gong, a part of me feels like, oh, should I be doing this?
Sure.
Like, I'm a white guy from Michigan.
Yeah. Right.
And I think that that's normal and fair in parts of it. But I ask that from your standpoint of now that the world is so interconnected.
Right.
And it's another thing. It's like, if something called me onto sound bathing, I wanted to say this real quick, but then I'm gonna go back to that.
Okay, yeah.
The reason why sound bathing is so valuable to me now, and it has been for the last couple of years, is because I do feel like it's so artistic.
Yeah.
And it's not. It's hard to put a pitch clock on it.
Yes.
It's a metaphor.
Right.
So I really
right.
like that about it.
Yeah.
Like, it's like lay down an experience.
Yeah.
And I love that aspect of it, which has drawn me to sound so brilliantly. But back to this is I think so much of things that hold us back, I'll speak for myself so I don't have to generalize, I'll just use me. Things that hold me back are feeling like I'm not worthy enough of being able to play a sound bowl or hit a gong because I'm a white guy with a beard. I grew up outside Detroit, Michigan, and I'm not allowed to do that. That's not what we do. And I've traveled so much and lived in so many different places and done things that I feel like that's like broken out of me.
Yeah.
But how does that feel when I'm saying that?
No, that's an interesting, it's one of my favorite subjects to think about, honestly, because despite being genetically of this heritage.
Because it makes sense.
I grew up in the United States.
Yeah.
From 3 months old or so on.
Yeah.
I always joke that I'm tragically American. I might be like the most American guy I know. Freedom, you bet.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I don't know, it's probably like maybe 10, 15 years ago, something patriotic snapped in me. And I really was all of a sudden just like, no, this place is great. This place is great.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Like,
we get to do whatever we want.
I mean, yeah, like the freedoms we do. Sure, we've got our, we got our hangups. Yeah, but like, who doesn't? Come on. Like, there's so many things that are great here. So in that sense, like, it is funny, and I've observed it. It was funny, especially in the peak of like kind of like the race, identity, politics stuff. That when that was really at its like strongest, first coming on the scene, it felt like this totally bizarre. It was this really bizarre experience because I was realizing I have all these like free passes that culturally I shouldn't have. Culturally, I am very American. The only Korean things about me other than like genetic things and, whatever, we could go as far deep down that rabbit hole as we maybe would want. But it's like, I like to eat kimchi. And
you like Tai Chi.
Well, that's Chinese.
Oh,
so like there
Eastern.
Already, it's so funny. It is Eastern, yeah. And
I'm just categorizing all that as Eastern.
Yeah. Well, which again is why I personally like the term Oriental, because to me it feels like this nice kind of catch-all of these East Asian cultures that clearly have a lot in common with each other.
Well, that's what I was saying to you earlier about in Western religious, the Abrahamic religions are.
And again, those are the religious traditions I grew up in.
Yeah, and those are largely supposed to be intellectual. Like the intention of it is you were supposed to know all of this. Yeah. And then the Eastern thought
tends to be much more, the experiential.
The essence, the body, the feeling. Whereas like in the Western part, if you just divide the world into West and East, and we're gonna go,
you do see like it seems like a pretty distinct.
Yeah, and it's like if you're in the Western world of if you're in the religious camp in the Western world, the part of the demand is to be obedient to knowledge.
Mental.
Yes, and you are supposed to be intellectually sound. And if you look at the world's philosophers, obviously you have Confucius and you have a lot of from the Eastern side. But if you really study some of the crazy work that still exists today. I mean, a lot of people were from Germany and from Austria and Switzerland and in that camp where also the religious demand was to be that.
Yeah. Well, and the whole modern scientific endeavor was originally grounded in a devout religious impulse. I mean, the whole idea of let's try to figure out like, what are all these birds? Yeah. What are all these plants? That already assumed that there is something to figure out, which was built on the whole notion that like it's divinely ordered and created. This is intelligently designed. Therefore, it will be intelligible and we can get to the bottom of it.
Right.
If you thought that this is nothing but chaos and there's nothing here, why would you start ordering, okay, there's a yellow-capped, chickadee finch, or like you wouldn't even bother with that endeavor because you'd be like, there's no way this is coherent. So like, yeah, that's an interesting connection.
Well, because if we go to how we look on the surface, okay, well, if we embody the Western, let's just imagine that you're not from America, and you came and we meet in the middle of the world, Well, my expectation off of first look is from my geographic, I would be part of one of the Abrahamic religions.
Yeah.
I would have been part of this intellectual part. Right. And then you would have been from the Tao or Buddhism or Hinduism. And you have all these concepts. And it's like, okay, we meet in the middle. And now it's like, well, now what? Right. And it's like, if you were to see the two of us, if you go and teach sound or hit a gong, off of the surface, it largely makes sense.
Well, you want to know something? I consider this man a Tai Chi teacher of mine, although I don't know him. I've only ever interfaced with him through some YouTube videos that he appeared in. A guy interviewed him out in Tompkins Square Park, I think it is, in New York City. Roberto Sharp is his name. And he made a really great comment because he's of African descent, a Tai Chi teacher in the big city. And the interview was talking to him. He goes, like, how has that been for you as a Tai Chi teacher? But, you're black, basically.
Great
you're
question,
teaching this Chinese art.
Yeah.
And he he goes, maybe for like TV commercials, I haven't gotten the nod. And he says, that he had heard that there was a big gym that he had auditioned or whatever, interviewed to teach Tai Chi at this big fancy gym, and he didn't get the gig. And the sense was that, had he been Chinese, or as he puts it, Chinese looking, he would have scored the gig. And he goes, I actually respect that, which I thought was like, what a great expression of like humility and like humanity to be like, yeah, I get that. Of course you want...
Yeah.
The consumers wanted the Chinese race experience, is how he describes it. And I'm like, yeah, of course they do. He goes,
isn't that like me wanting to go to Japan?
Yeah, he goes, if you go to an Italian restaurant and you look in the kitchen and it's Haitians, you probably should go like, wait a minute, is this an Italian restaurant or are the Italian owners? And it doesn't mean that the food won't be good, but it's like, it's appropriate to go, what's the deal? Here's a white guy banging a gong. What's up with that?
Yeah.
But if that guy has been, playing the gong every day for 40 years and he can take you to another planet with his gong playing, what do you care?
Yeah, I just think that that's an interesting part of the modern fabric that we're experiencing.
Yeah.
I think that it's just a fascinating part of where
I'd like to think that the weird tension about that is lightening up. I mean, my instinct to people is
I think it is for
to
sure.
not sweat that stuff at all. Because here's another, I do have a strong Buddhist sensibility about my worldview. I believe in reincarnation. My personal theory, I think a different thing every 5 seconds.
Yeah.
But I think I sincerely believe this. I'm pretty confident that a lot of the souls of Hiroshima and Nagasaki have reincarnated in the United States. This is why Gen Z loves anime. They're Japanese. They're Japanese souls born into these American bodies.
Wow.
They love anime, of course, because their souls came from there. And the reason they're here is to sort of eat this crazy karmic debris of like, how could a nation decide to do that?
Oh.
You are the people who did, or well,
I see what you're saying.
it's like flipped around.
So the nation did that.
Did that
but
to
then
them.
The karmic energy is that now you have
and
to
the victims
replay
of
it
that are now born in the country that did that.
to experience.
I mean, I don't, that's way above my pay grade, but I just have a sneaking suspicion there's a big thing to do with that. And I think there's something to be said for that same kind of concept with the United States and the indigenous tribes that are and were here. Yeah. This is why America is such a fractured nation.
Yeah.
Is because It always was. There always were these lines.
100%.
Don't you dare cross that river. Like, we signed a peace treaty, and if you come across the river,
go over there.
You're going to get it. We agreed. We're going to smoke you with arrows if you come over here. So stay on the west side, And to this day in America, west side, east side, Brooklyn, Compton.
Well, that's what I think. I think in so many ways of our timeline in the history of the species, that's what I think is happening.
Yeah.
I think that we're in the first... I think that the evolution of the species is happening right now.
Yeah.
Meaning, if we went from the erectus to the sapien, the sapien is becoming the whatever's next. Yeah, and I think that a lot of what you're saying is that's how that evolution's happening. I mean, the sage, Joey Bellis, who was on the podcast with me a few months ago, is Native American and does a lot of work on a reservation down in Arizona. He's one of the coolest guys ever. He does a lot of stuff with plant medicine and sweat lodges and drums, and he's the man. Yeah, you'd love this guy. And I was telling him, I was like, I've always burned sage because I feel connected to clearing the space with smoke, and we always use smoke, but am I...
And again, that's one of the most hotbed ones you could pick, right? Like, there's someone on the internet is probably mad every time you do that.
It's like, where are we at, And I think and those are things that I think that we're figuring that out as a unit.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think it all goes obviously to your interpretation. I think interpreting who we are as people, like in my understanding, we're the same. Right. Like, I'm the same as you, you're the same as me, and then we gloss it up with characters.
Yeah.
And we attach a narrative to what those characters are. And I'm from here, and this is what we do. And then you really dive into the depths of it, and you realize, all right, well, all these characters are talking about how they have all the same emotions. Yeah. They're all wrapped in paradox. And they all have a God that they can't really articulate or identify. And so therefore we have a mystery. Yeah. So all of us are trapped in mystery while experiencing paradox, having the same emotions.
Well, and that's one of like the brilliant, again, in like the Tai Chi space, where like as a philosophical endeavor, why it's brilliant is it's because it's always reminding us the only reason you think these things are different is because of how the same they are. You wouldn't think black guys and white guys are different if they weren't both guys.
Right.
Yeah. Otherwise, you would go, we always say, what's the opposite of hot? Cold. Okay, but hot and cold are temperature. They're the same thing. That's why you can think they're opposite, because they're connected. The real opposite of hot is like books. You know what I mean? Or like
something so out of the...
Anything that's not the thing is its functional opposite.
Yeah.
If you call it the opposite, that's how you know they're actually the same.
Yeah,
the competitors...
You can't have hot without cold, so they're needed.
Yeah, it's temperature. I mean, to call it hot and cold is almost not even worth the trouble, because... Oh, there's temperature. Which one? Who cares?
Yeah.
There's temperature. Oh, what color's the guy's skin? I don't know. Does he have skin?
Yeah.
Yes. All right. Like, we can work with that.
We can start.
Yeah. Okay. We're getting somewhere then, if we, if the batter and the pitcher don't agree to play baseball, then what are we doing here?
Right.
But they'll agree to show up and play the rules. Then we can have this duel. We can have this great competition.
Structure. Yeah.
Yeah. The cooperation of competition.
Playing the sandbox together.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like always remembering like how much of like and this is the thing, when we get caught in the opposites, this is something that maybe like, probably you do work with some of the athletes, like you're saying, it's like having the best season ever, having like my worst season ever, but you're having a season.
Right.
So, like, that's already a win. So let's start there. You're playing baseball. That's pretty rad. Whether it's good or bad is, like, there's no need to worry about defining that just yet. I mean, obviously there are, when we come back...
There's benchmarks. It's needed.
When we come back into, like, the realm of, like, pragmatic things, if you have a bad enough season for long enough...
We won't be there.
Yes, they might cut you.
You'll be doing podcasts.
Yeah. Right. But again, it's like maybe that's actually the more important thing for you to do anyway.
For sure.
So like that ability to kind of, it's a spiritual cliche, but there is some wisdom in it. Like there's no mistakes. Everything is unfolding exactly the way it's meant to. And maybe you aren't supposed to win a World Series. winning a World Series might be the least important thing you'll ever do in your life.
Yeah, it's the hardest.
It would be cool to have one.
For sure. Well,
I wanted to win a World Series when I was a kid.
Well, I think let's wrap on this thought, and because we're crushing.
We could go forever. Yeah.
It's very easy, and which I enjoy. Cheers. Great to see you.
Cheers.
But I think one of the things I've used a lot recently in terms of a quote is from Carl Jung. He says the first half of your life is building your ego. The second half of your life is killing it.
Yes.
And so you're kind of going back in. Now, back to paradox, you don't get one without the other, right? You got to have the ego to destroy the ego, and they all feed off each other. I think as I've gotten older, dealing with that quote and then reflecting on it or contemplating on it, however that comes out, it's more of the thought of what you're saying. So much of my narrative in pure ego as a young kid was I was good my entire life until I wasn't. I really only had 1 year of my life where I did not play good baseball, and I got released that year. Other than that, I cannot think of a time in my entire life I did bad.
Yeah.
I was successful every year at college. I dominated all the way through college. Wow. I dominated all through high school. I don't remember ever failing.
Yeah.
I had some bad games.
Right.
But I was always like one of the best players.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I wasn't, and I couldn't handle it, and I got released.
Yeah.
But I think that one of the things that was so needed out of ego was how much of how I needed the narratives to go in order to feel acceptance. Yeah. And that gets so fatiguing, and I think that should happen. That is part of the process.
Yeah.
So when you uphold, I need to win the World Series, too, at one point in my life, I felt like I genuinely had to win the World Series in order for you to even like me.
Yeah.
So that was all I was going to do.
Yeah.
And I think that was the same way I started my first business. I didn't make my millions as a player. So, okay, well, what are the other people in society that get praised? Super rich entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do that.
Okay, I'll do that.
Yeah, I'll do that. And I'll get the spotlight.
Yeah.
And that was another ego death.
Yeah.
And we have ego deaths all the time, right? But I think that to complete that thought, I think it's fascinating how there are things now that I've seen come to me, and I know I could do them.
Yeah.
Like I know I could do that, but I've had to learn all of the things you're saying. I've had to learn to be like, let that wave go.
Yeah.
Even though I want it.
Yeah.
I want to go on that, and I want someone to think that about me when I do it. It's not my time.
Yeah. That's the true great human art. It's like embracing truly who you are and not worrying about who you could be. Because it's like, of course, we all could be so many things. Yeah. But just like, what really lights you up? And not even necessarily what do you want?
But that's the paradox. Like, that's what I'm saying. Because I want that wave.
Yeah.
I want that.
Yeah.
Like I always say these things in everything is paradox. So it's all painful. It's like if I were to really flip the script and tell you all these things about myself, I can make myself sound pretty cool and good and heavy accomplishments.
Well, you are pretty cool. I'm not gonna lie. I think you're
well, going back to that thought, I can do all that.
Right.
But then the flip side of it is like the pain that goes into having maybe those material achievements or these sort of things. And like I see this all the time with pro athletes. I see this with people who make so much money in their own prison.
Yes.
They can't get out of it. And you'll watch them spend years hating what they're doing, and they hate playing sports.
Right.
They miss multiple years with their family. Yeah, they miss their whole 20s, their entire 30s, and then they don't know how to not have the identity.
Right.
But at the same time, they have a golden carrot with millions of dollars that got hung in front of them. And it's like it becomes a prison.
Yeah.
Because they don't want it.
Well, and that's the fundamental, that's what the Buddha's enlightenment was. It's like, no matter how much of getting what you want to get, you get, when you lose it, it's just going to then hurt all the harder.
Exactly.
And if you don't get what you want, it's going to sting, but then you don't have to lose the thing. So it's like, what are we, it's that choose your hard kind of stuff. And, you're going to have some kind of difficulty. So like kind of mitigating and balancing, reconciling your paradoxes.
Well, that's a great way of putting it. Because I think the importance of paradox is to use it to contemplate and then reconcile.
Yeah.
And understand it's not gonna. It is gonna be that great. It is gonna be that bad.
Yeah.
And it's like, to what degree of paradox am I willing to withstand?
Yeah. What am I willing to endure
Yeah.
in this game?
And what do I feel internally that calls to me that feels like the right paradox to endure? And that's what I'm talking about with the waves. Like, a lot of them are just not that, you just don't need. And that's where I think the reincarnation happens in this life regularly.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I knew I shouldn't have done that 5 years ago. Why did I do it? Now I'm learning now, and I have to restart.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, I feel like that in business a lot. I've had to restart business 10 years later. It's like, sometimes I do the things now, which is tails all the time, but I make decisions now in business that seem so simple to me. And I'm like, I'm running pretty much the same business I was running 10 years ago. Why didn't I just make that decision 10 years ago?
I wish I would have thought of this then.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
What am I doing now?
Yeah.
But it's, you had to go.
Sometimes
Mitch,
you have to go through the whole.
Yeah, Mitch, who was here earlier, me and him talk to each other about this all the time. We always say it's the hero's journey, because you run around the world fighting the world to come all the way back to realize you're the world.
Yeah.
And it's like, for whatever reason, our psychology does that.
Yeah.
Like, we need to go do that.
It seems like we do need it. Yeah, that's the Tai Chi metaphor I give to people, because they want to go through all these steps. Teach me all the moves, blah, blah, blah. And the ultimate expression of the practice is found in stillness. There's a standing meditation practice where you just stand there. And the art is that you don't even do that. You learn that you don't stand. You let standing happen to your body. This cup has been standing here the whole time.
Yeah, watching you.
You're just staring at me. So I joke to people, you know, like, and in all these spiritual like pursuits, kind of, you know, the typical thing we do is we go for that trip around the world.
Okay.
And then we come around full circle and go, it was here all along. And I tell people, really, if you really want to win the race quickly, take one step back and then just cross the finish line.
Beautiful.
You know, like, what are you doing? But we want that. And I was sharing with Mitch, like, I've realized I do this thing where, like, something about me needs to struggle through it to, like, really believe that I accomplished it.
Yeah, you were saying that
earlier. But it's like, actually, I could just, like, do it.
Yeah.
But it's like, no, I kind of need that little, I want a little dirt in my, you know, under my nails before it's all said and done. But what a world.
What a world. Well, it's a, yeah, I knew it. We went over 2. I haven't gone over 2 in many years, so this is great. And the thing is, I could keep going.
I know.
I could keep
we'll
going.
Do a round 2 someday.
It's dinner time.
Yeah.
I can feel my wife's energy ready to eat. And
like,
you got to get your mind dialed in, because you got some more stuff to do.
I got a workshop to do.
All right, Chi, how can, just finish it out, how can people find you? Obviously, we'll do this, but.
Instagram, Chibo Tai Chi, ChiboTaichi. That's pretty much all my
That's all
stuff.
your circuits.
Yeah.
I love it. And then hopefully you and I are doing some sound baths for some people here in the near future.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah. Cheers, folks. Thanks for hanging with us.